if he keeps up the production he has right now, not only are the Magic going to be in the playoffs, but he is going to be an All-Star. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about, well, the new season. Obviously, the NBA is back. The new season is off and away, and lots of new storylines are quickly building. One new player on a new team, or new player to the league itself, is Paolo Banchero, a guy that we've talked about on this channel previously before. But he was a number one overall pick this last offseason, and he has continued all offseason to show exactly why, right? Obviously, we saw in Summer League, he just looked better. Didn't look like anybody could compete with him on the court. The passing, the shooting, the defense, I mean, it was all there. And he's kind of continued that over. So obviously, preseason has gone away and the season has started. And the ESPN stat is that, he's got the first 25-5-5 debut as a rookie since LeBron James. Now, LeBron James has been in the league for 20 years, right? Over my entire life. And Banchero is the only guy to replicate it in that time span, which is, I mean, just a remarkable accomplishment in its own right. But when you were watching the game, I mean, he just looked like he didn't look like he had the rookie struggles. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think not only going to Duke and playing at, a more prestigious college school, under one of the most storied coaches of all time in his final season, right, as the head coach there. But also, you got to go back to his youth. You got to go back what got him to this point. Obviously, very deserving of the number one overall pick. The guy I believed was the best player, but was a shock to go number one because there was no real news that the Magic wanted him, and he fits perfectly for this team. But we'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later. But when you go back to his youth, I mean, you're looking at a kid from Seattle, right, where the Sonics no longer exist. And so what's the most popular thing in Seattle? It's the NBA runs. It's the off-season stuff. It's all that non-NBA basketball, right? All the kind of offset, however you want to put that, brand of basketball or whatever, in which, this kid's been playing against NBA players since he was in high school. I mean, you look at like Jamal Crawford. He's come out since Paulo, kind of really got his talks in, or people started talking about him to be a top pick in the NBA draft. He's come out and talked about a lot on multiple different platforms about how, Banchero is a guy that, he's close with. He he's helped develop his game. He's a guy that he believes is going to be very good. And he's a guy that's been in those NBA runs since he was in high school, right? So this kid, I mean, he's huge. He's like 6'10", 6'11", came in with a true NBA body. I mean, we see a lot of rookies come in and they have to bulk up quite a bit. The only other example of recency, well, I guess there would probably be two that came in and as rookies were like true NBA bodies would be like Herb Jones and Zion Williamson, both on the New Orleans Pelicans, obviously, but like Herb Jones last year, being a defensive monster in his rookie season, that happens a lot because his body can match up and withstand the whole season and also match up with those veteran players. Zion Williamson came into the league, obviously injured and stuff like that, took a while to get his debut, but everybody knew he was coming in with an NBA-ready body compared mightily to LeBron, as Paolo is now getting some of those comparisons as well, which is funny. I mean, anytime you're a top overall pick, you're going to get compared to LeBron, especially if you're a forward or whatever like that. I mean, even next year's projected first overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, who's 7'4", is being compared to LeBron, just as prospect, hype and stuff like that. But I mean, LeBron's obviously going to be the main comparison, right? Who else are you going to compare it to when you want to look at the perfect prospect, right? And so he came in, Banchero came in, NBA-ready body, and just played like he'd been there, right? And so I think a lot of that is accredited to his youth, to like Jamal Crawford and other veterans around the Seattle area, getting him in those runs, getting him that experience and that understanding of, if you can do it against NBA players at this age, imagine what you're going to be able to do when you actually get to make the league. And so I'm sure he has that mindset. Obviously, you don't go number one and you don't play the way that he's played without having that mindset of, I can be the best player on the court night in and night out. And they did end up losing to the Detroit Pistons in kind of a super fun battle. A couple teams that I kind of talked about quite a bit over the offseason of like, hey, these are young teams, but they're going to be good despite their youth, right? Obviously, both teams having high picks in this last draft, with Detroit at 4 and Orlando at 1, where Detroit ended up selecting Jaden Ivey. But both these teams they're going to be solid. I mean, in a very deep Eastern Conference, these teams, they have stuff to match up. I think you maybe look at Detroit as a little bit more of a contender for that playoff position, having especially brought in veterans like Bogdanovich or Bojanovic. I don't know, I confused the two. One of them's on the Hawks, one of them's on the Pistons. You guys know what I mean. The older one. That spelling isn't even the same either, but you know who I'm talking about. I confuse the saying of their names sometimes, but I think bringing him in over the offseason and kind of some of the stuff that they've put together over the past few years is going to be very beneficial for them, having more vets and stuff like that. But even if you look at this Magic team, I mean, you've got guys like Terrence Ross, you've got guys like Gary Harris and other guys that they've been to the playoffs. They are veteran leaders. They can still score the ball or they can defend. More in Gary Harris's ballpark would be the second part, as he hasn't been much of a scorer over the last few years. But then you still have youthful guys that can continue to improve on their potential outside of Paolo, right? And I think that's huge, especially considering most of these guys don't play the same position as him. You look at a guy like Cole Anthony. He obviously has a knack for the bright lights, right? And so he's a guy, he can shoot the ball. He can, he can get it going and really do something sometimes. And so can he be consistent with that? Is he going to end up being a six man? Is he going to be the starter? You've got like Jalen Suggs, a guy that I think coming into this year looks a lot better in that first game than he did last year. Had a very disappointing last season, but I mean, you go back to him and Gonzaga, he's shooting half-court shots, doing all this stuff, leading them on a run throughout the March Madness tournament, and gets drafted very high to go to the Orlando Magic. Had a disappointing rookie season, and so this is a guy that still has the potential to be one of the best players of his class, and he plays a different position than Paolo on the same team. I mean, I'm a little biased in this regard, but even RJ Hampton at that same point guard, shooting guard position that those other two guys are at, he's a guy that, I mean, he was drafted for a reason. There's a reason that Orlando also traded for him from the Denver Nuggets, because he showed promise here. Now, he struggled in like the summer league. He's struggled the last couple years, not only just getting playing time, but producing in that playing time. And so if he's a guy that maybe unlocks something, and then, I mean, we scroll over to the center position, right? You've got Wendell Carter Jr., who kind of solidified himself as like a really good center last year. I know a lot of Bulls fans were actually looking at Wendell last year and they're like, hey, he's better than Vucevic, and we traded not only Wendell to get Vucevic. And then even Mo Bamba, he kind of had a season last year where he kind of started to show some of that stuff that was promised of him coming into the league. Both those guys coming in the same draft class, obviously one going to the Magic, one going to the Bulls, ending up on the same team, competing for playing minutes, competing for the starting role and stuff like that. And so that's promising, right next to Banchero. Banchero's good defensively. He's not the best defender in the world, but either of those guys can become great defenders at that 5 position. Wendell's a little bit smaller, so maybe not quite as much of a rim protector as Bamba potentially could be. But Wendell right now is already a super, super solid defender. And I mean, this team has a lot of promise, and I'm not even mentioning their best rookie from last year, who wasn't Jalen Suggs. It was, in fact, their later pick, who they had received from the Bulls in that Vucevic trade, in Franz Wagner, right? Franz Wagner had a phenomenal rookie year last year. Personally, I think his ceiling is lower than a lot of others, although a lot of people are super, super high on this guy. And he pushed himself into that Rookie of the Year conversation last year, kind of ending the season, for a reason, right? He can be a playmaker. He can score the ball. Like, he's got different elements to his game that he really was able to thrive on last year, especially being a main option for a team with, a struggling top pick in Jalen Suggs, and, opportunities opened up and he was able to take advantage of that. Now kind of moving more into a 2, a 3, a 4 role on this team as a primary scoring option. how is some of that other stuff, that playmaking, that other stuff gonna compound as the season continues? And that's interesting to think about, especially next to Paolo, because that could be a dangerous forward duo in this league if they can kind of get it together. But yeah, Banchero, he was the best player on this team night one. I expect that to continue for his entire tenure in Orlando, whether that's his whole career, whether that's 7-8 years past this first extension or whatever it is. I expect him to by far and away be the best player on this team. I mean, yeah, there's the possibility that they trade for a superstar point guard or something like that if Jalen Suggs and those guys can't get it together, and maybe that guy's a little bit better, but marginally, right? And I think Banchero, I mean, he's got the potential to be one of the best players in the league, and that's why he was taken number one, and he clearly showed that in his debut. So again, like I said, I think the Magic, they're contenders for a play-in spot. I think this team is youthful and has used their assets very well, but still has a couple vets kind of sprinkled in there in which they're going to kind of be able to teach some of these young guys some things. And everybody has gone through struggles on this team already, other than Banchero, obviously. Like, they've all had the last couple years of being the Magic, in which they are, just like the Kings, a laughingstock of the league. And so, I mean, everybody on this team wants to turn that around, and probably knowing more than Banchero, who didn't even have to go through all that, because I mean, let's be real here. There's not people jumping out of their shoes to get drafted to the Magic. There's a reason that they are known for drafting players and them leaving. I mean, you look at Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest players of all time, for just that said thing. They had Dwight Howard, Hall of Fame center in my opinion, and they made the finals and stuff like that, and then they quickly went on a downfall. Penny Hardaway. I mean, there's countless people throughout Magic history. Tracy McGrady, right? There's more and more that the longer you think about it, the longer you can come up with names, yet they're not a storied franchise. They're not a franchise that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, the Magic have done all those things. I mean, what's their biggest accomplishment in the last 20 years? Stopping LeBron from making the finals. And that's not exactly, I mean, that's an accomplishment when you look at how many finals he made in a row. But like, if that's your biggest accomplishment, like, should probably get your priorities straight. You know what I mean? Even regardless, with LeBron being a top 2 player unanimously in NBA history. So I think the Magic, they've got a lot going for them. There's a lot of room for a lot of guys to improve on this team. And the way they started, they looked good. Again, I think, you can look at them losing to Detroit as an issue, especially with how bad Detroit was last year. But Detroit came in and looked more veteranly as well. I mean, for being a young team themselves as well. Like I said, they had brought in a couple vets and stuff like that, making trades with the Knicks and the Jazz to kind of bring in some of those guys. But I mean, you look at Isaiah Stewart hitting that 3 from the corner to kind of seal the game. He's a young guy that was big for him last year. He's obviously known for running at LeBron and making that whole scene and stuff like that. And that's crazy to think that was only last year. But he was a good player for him last year. He played center. Now he's kind of stepping out to the 4, shooting the ball a little bit more, kind of expanding his game. We saw Cade Cunningham really manage the offense super well. And even Jaden Ivey, he had a pretty stellar debut for a rookie, being the 4th overall pick, which was just, I mean, easily outshined by Banchero, who had a spectacular debut. But Ivey fit in. He showed the explosiveness that he was drafted with and for. And I mean, they're an exciting team. So I think that loss shouldn't be looked at as, oh, they lost to Detroit. I think it should be like, hey, these are 2 super young teams that competed together, and they're going to probably be competing against each other in the East for years to come when you look at some of the cores that are kind of been put together by their GMs over the past few years. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to take away. Obviously, the Magic play the Atlanta Hawks tonight, so that's an interesting game. The Hawks, they looked solid. I mean, it's Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, John Collins. We know what they've got, right? There's still a little bit of questions there with fit and stuff like that. By some people, I think when you look at what they were able to do, though, to kind of start the season, I think that's solid. And to be honest, did I watch the game of Atlanta versus Houston? No. But And is Houston a big beat? No. But Atlanta's a team that's expected to be competing for the playoffs and stuff like that. They did wrap up some of those questions in that first game of, like, is this team going to work together? As we saw them, handle the Houston Rockets as you should do. If good teams beat bad teams, that's your winning formula to make the playoffs. And so I expect, this team to continue to kind of do their thing. And DeAndre Hunter got a huge extension before the season, so I'm sure he's going to want to continue to start the season very well. He may get the Banchero matchup in this game. And, like, when you're looking at this game from the Magic's perspective, this isn't a must-win, right? Not anything this season is a must-win, but it's a must-compete. It's a must, hey, this team just whooped up on the Houston Rockets. They were a top pick with us last year. We're better than the Houston Rockets. We need to come out, and just like we competed in the Detroit game, we need to compete, and we need to be there at the end of the game with an opportunity to win it. Now, yeah, Isaiah Stewart sealed the game, but hey, maybe DeJounte misses the three, and the game isn't sealed. And that gives the Magic the ability to come down there and maybe get their first win tonight versus the Atlanta Hawks. And so, like I said, I would expect DeAndre Hunter to probably get the matchup with John Collins not being the greatest defender of all time. So we'll see if Banchero can kind of use that NBA-ready body against more of a wing defender than necessarily potentially a post defender. If John Collins gets the matchup, I think there's definitely plenty of room there for Banchero to take advantage of his liabilities defensively. And I even think, John Collins is known for his jump out of the gym ability and stuff like that, but I think Banchero on defense is going to match up fairly well against that. And so I'm excited to continue to see Banchero play throughout the season. Obviously, it is only one game, and there will be many, many more to come, at least 81 for this Orlando Magic team as the season continues. But yeah, I'm excited for this team. I'm excited for Banchero. I think he was my preseason lock for Rookie of the Year by far, and I'm going to continue to stick with that. I know a lot of people like how Keegan Murray looked in Summer League. I know a lot of people like Jaden Ivey going to the Pistons. I know nobody's really picking Jabari Smith, even though he was the second overall pick, to the Houston Rockets. And then obviously he was the third overall pick. Chet Holmgren being injured as the second overall pick for the OKC Thunder kind of puts him out of the race. So it is kind of a three-way race. Maybe there'll probably be a guy down the draft board if it pops out and kind of does some stuff. Maybe Shaedon Sharpe can be that guy. We saw some promising stuff out of him in Portland's first game, being able to get, I think it was 12 points off the bench. But yeah, Banchero, I think, is a lock for Rookie of the Year. And I mean, if we're looking at it realistically, he could be the first All-Star as a rookie since Blake Griffin, who sat out a whole year. So if he keeps up the production he has right now, not only are the Magic going to be in the playoffs, but he is going to be an All-Star when it comes that time. So again, excited to see Banchero. I think sky's the limit for him, and the Magic are going to be a fun team to watch this year. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe for more, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.